Have you ever noticed a strange pattern in your life? One that seems almost unfair? You start something new, a habit, a project, maybe a plan for self-improvement, and at first, everything feels exciting. You're motivated. You feel a spark of energy. You tell yourself, this time will be different. I will succeed. And for the first few days, maybe even a week, it feels true. You are on track. You are moving forward. But then, almost without warning, something changes. The energy that was driving you begins to fade. You feel tired, even though you've slept enough. Your mind drifts off in the middle of tasks. Distractions appear out of nowhere. Emails, social media, minor tasks, small chores, they all feel suddenly urgent. Procrastination creeps in like a shadow you didn't see coming. And then a sense of heaviness settles in. Not physical, but emotional. You feel like there's a weight on your chest, making even small actions feel like a struggle. Most people look at this and think the problem is motivation. I'm just not motivated enough, they tell themselves. I need more discipline, more willpower. I just don't want it enough. But that's rarely the truth. Motivation is usually present at the start. It's why you begin. The problem is what comes next. Resistance. It shows up quietly, in small, almost invisible ways. It's not a sudden wall you crash into. It's a subtle, creeping force that slows you down, making progress feel exhausting or impossible. This pattern repeats itself in almost every area of life: work, relationships, personal growth. You notice it when you start a new fitness routine, a meditation habit, or a professional project. You notice it when you're ready to make a big change, to finally take a step toward the life you want. And just as you feel things starting to click, the resistance hits, energy disappears, motivation feels like it has vanished. You're left questioning yourself. And here's the tricky part. This isn't random. It's not laziness. It's not a lack of willpower. It's part of a deeper pattern of human psychology, something that has evolved over centuries. It's subtle, quiet, and deeply protective, even though it often feels like sabotage. Recognizing this pattern is the first step toward understanding it. When you see it clearly, you begin to separate your conscious intentions from the unconscious resistance that always appears just as you're about to grow. Think about starting a morning routine. Day 1. You wake up early, energized, ready to take control. Day 2. Still motivated. Day 3. It becomes harder. You hit snooze. You scroll your phone. You feel like you've lost the energy you had at the beginning. Your mind is not failing you. It's simply reacting to something deeper. Understanding this pattern gives you insight into why growth is so often uncomfortable. It primes you to notice what's really happening beneath the surface, setting the stage for the next revelation. The shadow. Once you begin to notice the pattern of resistance in your life, it raises a natural question. Why does this happen? Why does your energy disappear just as you're about to grow? This is where Carl Jung's concept of the shadow comes in. A psychological idea that explains the unseen forces influencing your behavior. The shadow isn't evil. It isn't some dark, mystical force that wants to ruin your life. On the contrary, it is protective. It was formed over countless years of human evolution as a kind of psychological mechanism built to keep you safe. In the past, safety often mattered more than growth. Taking risks without preparation could mean danger. Your shadow is a remnant of that survival strategy, quietly working to preserve what is familiar and safe, even if it holds you back from the life you truly want. To the shadow, growth feels like danger. Even positive change, things that you consciously want and understand are good for you, can trigger discomfort. Your mind reacts as if the new action is threatening. That's why, Even when you set out with clear intentions, the shadow will whisper, "Not now, rest, hesitate." It doesn't shout, it doesn't attack aggressively. It works in whispers, in tiny nudges, in subtle delays that make you question yourself. Tiredness, distraction, hesitation, these are its tools. Recognizing the shadow is powerful because it reframes your experience. You begin to understand that the discomfort, the procrastination, the mental fatigue, these aren't signs of weakness. They are your unconscious mind trying to protect you from the risk of change. Once you see this, it becomes easier to separate your conscious goals from these automatic defensive responses. You can observe the shadow's influence instead of being completely ruled by it. Here's a relatable example. Imagine you start a new fitness routine. You wake up excited, motivated. The first day feels good, the second day too. Then suddenly you feel inexplicably tired. A small voice in your mind says, "Maybe just skip today. You can start tomorrow." Social media feels irresistible. Emails seem urgent. Even minor distractions feel urgent or compelling. You're not lazy. You're encountering your shadow. Your subconscious is protecting your old, familiar patterns. It prefers comfort and safety to the risk of change. The shadow also explains why this resistance is subtle. It rarely attacks directly. It doesn't cause a complete meltdown. Instead, it slows you down quietly, incrementally, making small choices that gradually keep you from progress. That's why discipline alone often feels insufficient. You can try to push yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, but the resistance is deeper. It is unconscious. By learning about the shadow, you gain insight into these invisible patterns. You realize that the moments when growth feels hardest are the moments when the shadow is most active. This awareness doesn't make the struggle disappear, but it gives you the language and framework to navigate it. You can recognize, for example, this fatigue, this hesitation. It's not that I'm failing. It's the shadow protecting me from the unknown. That recognition is empowering. It allows you to move forward consciously with patience and understanding instead of frustration and self-blame. Understanding the shadow also prepares you for the next part of your journey, realizing that growth requires change at a deeper level, not just in behavior, but in identity itself. And as you'll see, the shadow's subtle protection can sometimes feel uncomfortable, even painful, but that discomfort is a signal that transformation is real and meaningful. By this point, you've likely begun to recognize the subtle patterns of resistance in your own life, and you've been introduced to the idea of the shadow, a protective, unconscious force that slows you down when change feels threatening. Now, let's explore why, despite knowing what you want and despite having motivation, discipline often fails. Most people assume that failure is a result of weakness. They tell themselves, "I just need more willpower," or "I should be stronger, more consistent." But the truth is far more complex. The resistance you experience is not a lack of effort. It is psychological, not physical. Discipline can only take you so far because it works on conscious behavior. The shadow, however, operates at a deeper, unconscious level, influencing your choices and energy in ways that often go unnoticed. Consider the common experiences of tiredness, distraction, and overthinking. You may sit down to work on a task, fully intending to complete it. Within minutes, your attention drifts. Minor notifications or small, irrelevant tasks suddenly feel urgent. Your mind jumps from one thought to another. You tell yourself, "I'll just check one thing, then get back." And before you know it, An hour has passed with minimal progress. This is the shadow at work. It doesn't confront you with force. Instead, it nudges, distracts, and slows. Its goal is safety, the comfort of the familiar, not stagnation or failure. The subtlety of the shadow is what makes discipline feel ineffective. You may push yourself harder, wake up earlier, or schedule strict routines, but these efforts address only surface-level behaviour. The deeper resistance remains, quietly steering you back to the comfort zone. That's why, often, the more we try to force discipline, the more frustrated and exhausted we become. Tiredness is no longer just fatigue, it is defence. Distraction becomes an escape, and overthinking becomes a method of delaying change. The shadow is ingenious in its strategy. It doesn't need to stop you all at once. It works gradually, invisibly, creating a pattern of minor interruptions that collectively stall progress. Here's a relatable example. You plan to spend an hour on a project. The first 10 minutes go well, but then your thoughts wander. Maybe you check emails, scroll through social media, or think about unrelated tasks. Each distraction is a small victory for the shadow. You might feel guilty, frustrated, or impatient, believing you're failing due to lack of discipline. But in reality, your mind is responding to the deeper fear of growth, the fear of leaving behind familiar patterns, even if those patterns no longer serve you. Recognizing the shadow's influence transforms your perspective. Discipline is still valuable, but it must be paired with awareness. You learn to observe the resistance, identify it as a protective mechanism, and respond consciously. Instead of fighting it blindly, you can structure your environment, habits, and mindset to work with the shadow rather than against it. For instance, acknowledging that mental fatigue is part of the process allows you to pace yourself without self-blame. Understanding that procrastination is a signal rather than a failure empowers you to make small, deliberate steps forward. This understanding also prepares you for the deeper truths that follow. The uncomfortable realization that real growth requires the transformation of identity itself. The shadow's protective mechanisms intensify as change becomes imminent. By seeing the shadow clearly in this part of your journey, you gain insight into the mechanics of resistance and lay the groundwork for embracing the challenges of transformation in the next section. Now that you've recognized the patterns of resistance and understood the shadow's subtle influence, it's time to confront one of the deepest truths about personal growth. Real transformation requires something to die. Not your body, not your skills or abilities, but your old identity, the version of yourself that has been comfortable, familiar, and safe, even if it has limited your life. This idea can feel unsettling because it strikes at the core of who we think we are. The shadow senses this impending change. It knows that letting go of the old identity is risky because growth inherently involves moving into the unknown. So it reacts, not with aggression, but with subtle suffering. Tiredness intensifies, distractions multiply, emotional heaviness grows. You may feel as if every small inconvenience is magnified, every tiny failure is amplified. It is as if the universe itself is testing your resolve. But what you are really experiencing is the shadow's protective mechanism, a force designed to keep you safe from the discomfort of transformation. Think about it. When you've tried to meditate consistently or stick to a new habit, everything may seem manageable for days. Then, suddenly, distractions and obstacles increase exponentially. Social media becomes irresistibly tempting. Minor annoyances irritate you more than usual. you feel mentally and emotionally drained, as if progress has become impossible. It's not that you are weak or failing, it's the shadow reacting to the impending death of the old self. It doesn't want the familiar, comfortable identity to vanish, so it creates a struggle that tests your readiness for transformation. This is where understanding becomes empowering. When you recognize that the struggle is not arbitrary, not personal, and not a sign of weakness, it reframes your entire experience. Every moment of resistance, every ounce of fatigue becomes a signal, a marker of meaningful growth in progress. The discomfort itself is evidence that transformation is occurring, that the shadow is preparing you for the next version of yourself. Rather than resenting or fearing these moments, you can view them as proof that change is real and significant. Awareness of this process also gives you practical guidance. You learn to pace yourself, respect the emotional intensity, and respond to resistance with patience instead of frustration. You no longer fight blindly against tiredness or distraction. Instead, you navigate it consciously. You notice the subtle signs, honor the struggle, and take deliberate small steps forward. These steps are not wasted. They are part of the process of reconciling with the shadow and integrating the new self. Ultimately, the discomfort intensifies just before breakthroughs. It is not coincidental that your hardest moments often come right before transformation. The shadow's resistance peaks because the old identity is most threatened at that time. By understanding this, you gain insight into your internal processes and equip yourself with both awareness and resilience. You begin to see that growth is never linear or comfortable. It is cyclical, challenging, and often unsettling, but profoundly meaningful. In embracing the uncomfortable truth, you also embrace responsibility for your transformation. The shadow may resist, but you can engage consciously. You begin to recognize the subtle cues of the inner mind, to observe resistance without judgment, and to continue moving forward despite discomfort. This understanding reframes every moment of struggle as an opportunity for growth, turning obstacles into markers of progress and helping you navigate the challenging journey of becoming the next version of yourself.